This episode of Tales from the Crypt is brought to you by the Cash App. You freaks already know all about them. And if you don't, let me tell you about them. The Cash App is allowing you to stack sats. So you can buy and sell Bitcoin on the Cash App. You can send Bitcoin from the Cash App to a personal wallet, from a personal wallet to the Cash App. And then on top of that, you get the ability to use the Cash App at other places with their Boost program. So you get a specialized debit card. You get to put your signature on it, Bitcoin symbol, Lightning, whatever you see fit. And then you go to partner merchants, whether it be Whole Foods, Chick-fil-A, DoorDash, local coffee shops, and you save money when you shop with your Boost card, with your Boost enabled. Use the code STACKINGSATS. That's one word, STACKINGSATS. You're going to get $5, and $5 is going to go to Alves Lacrosse, a charity very near and dear to our heart. Again, if you haven't downloaded it yet and you're in the U.S. and you're looking to buy Bitcoin, what the hell are you waiting for? Use the code STACKINGSATS. Download the Cash App from your local app store today.
Tales from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty here on a Monday afternoon in the relegation studio with a very, very special guest. Also here with Matt Odell. Matt, what's going on?
What's up, freaks?
We are pressed for time. We have a hard stop in like an hour and a half. We have a lot to get through. This is a very special episode, a subject that Matt and I are fascinated by, but really don't have a good grasp or understanding because we were not participating in this particular market when it was popular. We were sitting here with an ex-vendor from the Silk Road. I'd like to introduce you freaks to John Doe. John.
What is cracking?
Well, again, thanks for reaching out to us and being willing to tell the story. We've been sitting here for 15 minutes getting like a pre-interview dump of your story, and it's been fascinating.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild one for sure. So
again, we're pressed for time. Let's jump right into it. This show is Tales from the Crypt, and I've heard up to this point almost 100 tales, give or take from 90 to 100 people, and a lot of it starts with getting in by hearing something about the Silk Road. You were the first person who was actually on the Silk Road and got introduced to it that way. So let's jump into it. How did you get mixed up with the Silk Road?
Yeah, so I mean, it all originally started. Was at a party one night, and someone came around and was telling me about this thing called the Silk Road and Bitcoin, and how you can order essentially anything you want online, and I was just kind of blown away by it, and I didn't think it was possible. So, I kind of fell down this rabbit hole of reading about it and finding about Bitcoin and Tor and encryption and all this stuff. And so from there, I went and, bought my first Bitcoin and started testing out, went on Silk Road and ordered some ecstasy from Europe. And I still was pretty skeptical at this point. I was like, $500. I think it was actually $600 at the time, how much I bought. And I was like, it's probably not going to show up. And sure, like lo and behold, 2 weeks later, shows up, just unmarked envelope. And I was just blown away, completely floored. And I just like sat back in literally awe, and it was like, how is this possible? And then it started going deeper. I started reading about Bitcoin, and then, I got this idea that I should start selling on there, because I was, big into the weed scene at the time, and there wasn't a lot of people on Silk Road at that point that were selling, weed, and so I became a vendor on there, and I was like, when I first became a vendor, I was like, there's probably going to be no traction. No one's going to want this stuff. No one's going to buy from me. And like, as I made a vendor account, and probably within 2 hours later, someone had bought from me. And it was that in itself was crazy. It was just the craziest thing.
So walk us through what it's like being a vendor. What do you do? What does the marketplace look like, and how does somebody buy from you, and how do you decide whether or not to engage with that person?
Right. So from a buyer's perspective, it's a lot like eBay. Like, you have rating systems, and there's pictures and product reviews, and it's like there's a pretty good user experience from a buyer's perspective. And then when someone does buy from you, and you're the vendor on the opposite end, it's exactly like fulfilling any like online order. It comes through on your end, like X whatever product they got, and then it'll have their PGP message, and you can decrypt that, and from there you just ship it out. It's pretty seamless. It's actually crazy when you think about it. So,
well, there was many revolutionary things about Silk Road. I mean, it was what we were talking about earlier. It lasted for 2 years and 10 or 11 months, from February 2011 to October 2013. Made a huge splash. But before we dive, like, I want to dive into like the Silk Road forums and all that stuff. But let's continue with your personal saga, and then we'll get back to like the essence of Silk Road.
Right.
So you started selling weed. People were buying.
Yeah. So I saw this like gap in the market where there was people selling weed. Actually, what I got into was selling edibles, because there was people selling weed on there, but there wasn't many people selling edibles. So I was going and getting edibles and then reselling them on there for 3 or 4 times what I would purchase them for. And now I was at the point where, okay, so I've sold these edibles and I've been paid in Bitcoin. What do I do with this Bitcoin? And so the only thing I could realistically think at the time, because there was no Bitcoin ATMs. I'm not even sure if Coinbase or anything, like exchanges were around back then. I know Bitstamp was around, but my only logical thing was to go back to being a buyer. And so I would buy other products on the Silk Road. So I started buying, ecstasy and cocaine and all these other things, just as a way of liquidating my Bitcoin. So it kind of became this loop where I would turn these edibles into Bitcoin, and then I wouldn't know what to do with the Bitcoin, and so would buy more product to in turn turn it into cash to buy more edibles. It kind of fell on top of itself.
To get that circular economy going.
Exactly.
And how long were you doing this for?
I think it lasted for about, I would say, 8 or 9 months is the length of time it was. Yeah.
And how intense did it get for you personally?
Intense in what sense? Like
did the amount
like
of
volume?
Business, the amount of business that you got.
It was absolutely insane. Like from the moment I made the vendor account, I didn't expect anything. And then a couple hours later, someone had purchased something from me. So like right there, I was blown away. And then it quickly picked up steam. It quickly was like every day there was $2,000 worth of stuff that needed to go out all over the place. And so yeah, it got really crazy, and it really blew my mind. But and then I was thinking about it, because I had many times where I was thinking about, I'm like, is this a bad thing that I'm doing? And I'm still big into like harm reduction, and that was why I really like support these like the Silk Road and all the variants of it, is because it essentially is like a harm reduction thing. It's saving people from going out on the streets and interacting with potentially like dangerous people or anything like that. But yeah, as far as the scale of it, it got pretty crazy pretty quick.
Well, and were you ever like nervous, like this is getting too big? You said you constantly question yourself, like, am I doing something good? Which, and you're talking to somebody who is a big anti war on drugs, right? Because I think it causes more harm than good. Oh, definitely. At the end of the day, but definitely. Did you ever get to a point where you're like totally stressed out, like this is getting too big, maybe, or did you like the? No, I liked the thrill of it. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't even. It was just. No, I honestly. I knew it was picking up steam, and no, it was just fun. It was just like, it was like, I don't know how to explain. There was a rush to it. And it was like I had built something. I had built this like, this brand, and people trusted the brand, and then also, like making the money was obviously great, but
seeing the reviews come back from people and hitting me with 5 stars and being happy. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. That's really crazy.
Well, let's jump into that. Like, the drug trade today is, on the streets at least, it would seem to me, as an outsider looking in, like things like fentanyl are getting into the market, and you're getting tainted drugs, and people are dying because of it.
Right.
I think it came out recently that Mac Miller died because he was doing fentanyl or something laced with fentanyl.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about, like harm reduction.
Right.
And so how did Silk Road enable this harm reduction in your mind?
Okay, so like perfect example, like you're saying, Mac Miller recently passed away, and supposedly whatever he was doing contained fentanyl. So the biggest thing with these marketplaces is if you buy something, for example, some oxycodone pills or whatever it is that you want, and the vendor ships it to you, and the person on the other end goes to test it, and it's not what they say it is, they're going to get a bad review, and they're quickly going to get either delisted or just like go into oblivion. So like it's the vendor's responsibility to make sure that they're delivering exactly what they say it's going to be. So that's why I'm a big proponent of it, just because, like today you have people just dying from crazy stuff. So
from tainted drugs.
Right.
So there was a whole like reputation system, right? So, how exactly? So was it the way you described it just there? Was there like also there was moderators that were deciding to delist things as well?
Yeah. So because there's a whole bunch of different things. People would be a vendor for 4 or 5 months and be legitimate, and then they would exit scam and all of a sudden just take in orders and never ship shit out, or so there was people actively monitoring it, and that's also part of the game too, especially now with the way these marketplaces are. It's just the exit scam is a part of the game, and you have to understand that like a vendor that you might be reliable now doesn't necessarily mean they will be reliable in a week, a month, or whatever it is. So that's just part of the game. But at the time there were lots of moderators actively checking listings and checking vendors and making sure it was all kosher.
Yeah, and for all the flack that Silk Road has gotten in the media since it got shut down, and it's obviously painted as a huge boogeyman in the mainstream media in particular. It's enabling drug trade and all that. But at the end of the day, we were discussing this before we hit record too, is that a lot of the people went to the Silk Road for the forums and sort of the free market vibe, and had really, I don't want to say, not optimistic, but had pure intentions and good intentions at the end of the day. Right,
yeah. No, I actually think it's a big misunderstanding, is that like a lot of people think of the Silk Road as just a marketplace. And it was a marketplace, but that was probably maybe 40 to 50% at most of what it was. Like a lot of the other huge part of it was the forums. Like there was thousands of people there that never ever interacted with the marketplace, never bought anything. They would just go on the forums to discuss ideas, Bitcoin, economics, like philosophy. It was just this crazy community of people just coming together and sharing ideas. It was really cool. You could spend your whole day getting lost just in all these ideas. And even the site operator, Dread Pirate Roberts, was a huge proponent of the forums. And he was not always there, talking about the newest update or security thing. A lot of it was him. He had this thing called the Dread Pirate Roberts Book Club, where he would talk about certain ideological books that he was reading at the time and have conversations about it. And so, there still is this misunderstanding about the Silk Road and that it was just for drugs, and it really wasn't.
Let's jump more into Dread Pirate Roberts. Like how much of a focal point was he to the site? Or was he a Satoshi-like figure where he built it and sort of faded into the background and just peeped in whenever he could? Or was he somebody that was sought after in the forums like pretty heavily?
It's hard to say, because my understanding of it is that the Dread Pirate Roberts wasn't. It was one person who ran the site, but I think it was the account itself was passed through many people.
Mm-hmm.
So no one really knows. Like, I know Ross Ulbricht is serving time for being DPR, but realistically, I don't believe that he is DPR. Like, I think there was multiple people. The account was passed down, so it's hard to say, who's DPR. But he played a big role, and people looked up to him. I would say,
Yeah, it's pretty shitty to see what happened to Ross.
Horrible.
Horrible. Ross is serving 2 life sentences now.
Yeah.
And he never acted as a vendor, right?
No.
So,
or I wouldn't know if he did.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on Ross, his situation, and sort of the end of Silk Road, the original vision, at least?
I think that he was just a fall man, honestly. Like, it was getting to the point where they had to do something about these marketplaces, or Silk Road was the one, but like it was being put in the news, and it was the Amazon of drugs, and so they had to pin someone for it. Essentially, they can't let that go. Just let everyone know that this is out there, and it's, So I think he was a fall guy. If he had some involvement in it, I don't know, but I really do believe that like the other DPRs, there was multiple of them. So
yeah,
and it's really shitty to see what happened to him. He doesn't deserve any of that, especially when how I know about Silk Road and like harm reduction and the forums and everything about it, and he's just looked at as this like kingpin of murder for hires, which was all bullshit. And
so let's jump into that. That's one of the main. I believe they charged him with it, but he was never found guilty of it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And he was sort of goaded, and it was one of those situations where the FBI set him up and like sort of goaded him.
I forget all the details of it specifically, but I know there was 2 corrupt agents actually involved who are doing time now for it, and they were giving out information to DPR or someone involved with the website about their investigation into it. So they were playing both sides of the fence. So right there, they were all corrupt, and So I mean, it was all corrupt, and then
I think they dropped the charges.
Yeah, they wound up dropping the charges.
It wasn't even that they found him not guilty. I don't even think they...
It never...
they charged him originally, I think, just to paint him bad in the press, and then they dropped the charges eventually.
That's 100% what it was.
Yeah.
Because it never... there was a lot of talk about the murder for hire, and it came out that they had staged it, and it wasn't really a thing. And that's what they were doing. That's why I think Ross was the fall guy. They're throwing enough mud up on the wall to paint Ross in this negative light and seeing if something sticks.
No, and it's funny, that dichotomy of how they're picturing him and how they caught him and what he was doing when he felt so confident. And maybe he was naive, but he was in a coffee shop with his laptop just working.
His library.
A normal dude.
Right.
Was it a library?
I
thought it was a coffee shop.
In a public library.
I thought it was a coffee shop.
But either way, it was a public place.
Apparently they devised a plan in a public place. I believe it was a coffee shop, and they, like, the agents or whatever, like, faked a fight, like, in another part of the restaurant. Like, Ross, like, stood up and his laptop was open, and they grabbed it before he could, like, close it.
Like, come on. I mean, like, that just... knowing that the 2 agents involved were corrupt to start with, and that Ross, supposedly the mastermind behind all this thing, just had his computer open and everything right there and a notepad with all the details.
They got him to sign in, too, because it's much harder. Like, you can't... It's not encrypted. The laptop isn't encrypted while it's running. So they needed him to, like, sign into the service and have his laptop connected to power and unlocked. So I think there was some kind of... they, like, set a trap for him online to begin with, that he had to sign in. There was some reason why he had to sign in. Something was going wrong. He had to sign in, and then they waited till he signed in to hit him.
Yeah.
Either way, he got fucked.
And that's how they got the BTCE guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was on vacation, and they waited till he signed in, and then they drove an unmarked car through his gate. So when he ran out in his robe to scream at whoever drove it in, they arrested him and went inside, and the computer was unlocked.
Yeah, I didn't know that. But yeah, I feel bad for that guy. He doesn't deserve any of that. Doesn't.
No. Do you think we'll ever get Ross out?
I hope so. I really hope so.
I did too. I mean,
He could end up getting out on one of these, pardon all non-violent drug offenses.
Mhm.
yeah, that's a crazy thing. He's serving 2 life sentences for a non-violent offense. And
Right.
So, and that's the other thing. Like, even though they shut down the Silk Road, like many have, it's like a hydra. Like many drug markets have sprouted, and it's out of its ashes.
Right.
Like, so have you been following the proliferation of
Yeah.
its not copycats, but its predecessors?
Yeah. I mean, there's been, I can't even count how many now have developed since the original one. It's I mean, it feels like every day there's a new one, but the whole marketplaces have changed. Silk Road, when it was around, was really reputable, and he was really there. Like, the ideals of it was really harm reduction. And then you've got places now that there's Sheep Marketplace and Dream Marketplace, and I can't even forget them all. But they'll be around for 4 or 5 months, and you think they're following the ideals of the original Silk Road, only to find out that they're just planning one massive exit scam.
Yeah.
So it's changed a lot.
How do these exit scams work typically?
Well, I mean, essentially, the site operators build up the trust of the community because there's a gap. As one site goes down, there's a void to fill. So now this new marketplace comes on, and for 6 months, maybe a year, however long it is, they build up the trust of their users and vendors that they're there for the long haul, and then one day they'll just disable withdrawals and just disappear with everyone's money.
Damn, classic exit scam.
Yeah.
Do you think there will be an altruistic original Silk Road like service that pops up, or is there one that has turned out not to be an exit scam in your mind?
No, I don't think. I don't believe. No, I think it will keep playing out how it is. It'll be around a site will be around for 4 or 5 months, and it'll eventually exit scam or get caught, or whatever it is. Until there's a decentralized way of doing it, and I don't know how that happens. I think this is like the new
normal.
The new normal.
But,
yeah.
I mean, you don't even need it to be decentralized. I haven't been following any of the new ones, but you could easily imagine like a non-custodial,
right.
like multi-sig
Right.
version,
Escrow.
right?
Yeah.
Where like they only control one key, the user controls the other keys.
Right.
Escrow could be multi-sig, and then the exit scam, they can't take that much money.
Yeah, and there might be.
But then you still have the vendors. The vendors can always exit scam.
Right, vendors can always exit scam, and there might be. I haven't followed it recently. Maybe there is one with multi-sig escrow or however.
That's what I'm saying. I'd be surprised if there weren't.
Yeah, there probably are, but also it also is up to the vendor to be willing to accept that type of order. Like, a lot of these vendors will require payment up front, especially with larger quantities of stuff. So it's, at the end of the day, if a buyer comes to them and it wants to pay with Monero or something, and the vendor can, no, I don't want to take that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, the big question is Bitcoin still the dominant cryptocurrency in these dark markets? Is it something like Monero?
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of them, you'll see some vendors say they accept Monero and Litecoin and stuff, but I mean, I don't have any of the stats on who's buying what with that, but yeah, Bitcoin is king for sure.
And so this world sort of introduced you to the world of Bitcoin. How did the Silk Road help you come to understand and appreciate Bitcoin?
Yeah, so it's kind of a crazy. That's another crazy part of my story too. Is when I was a vendor on there and was going through that whole route of selling edibles and getting Bitcoin for it and turning into other products to sell online. I was arrested for an unrelated drug possession charge. And I served some time for that. Actually, it was about 4 years that I did. And during that time, Bitcoin had appreciated tremendously in value. So it was like this, what were you saying, a forced hodl?
The forced hodl.
Forced hodl. You weren't in a coma.
Yeah.
You were just forced to hodl for 4
Yeah,
years.
couldn't get a laptop in jail. So actually really grateful for them because it's kind of a crazy thing. I probably would have, sold at $60 or $70, and because of them, I didn't. So yeah, I'm pretty grateful. It's a weird story. One of the few cases that I guess people are grateful for going to jail.
What like did you get out, realize how much you appreciate it, and be like, whoa, I probably shouldn't touch this now if I waited?
So, yeah, so it's a really interesting. So I went in that the idea is Bitcoin is just used as a medium of exchange to buy these things, and I came out how it is now. I'm like, whoa, this thing is not. It can be used to buy things, but it's more so the store of value, and that's when I got out. That's when I started falling down this whole other rabbit hole of really figuring out what Bitcoin is about and you know, the game theory and economics, and like I'm just grateful for Bitcoin because it's like, it's kind of weird to say, but it's like saved my life. I never graduated college or anything like that, but it's taught me so much about economics and game theory and history, finance, and all these crazy things. And yeah, so when I came out and it had appreciated in price, that it had changed my view on what it is and all that.
Were you following it all while you were in jail?
A little bit. I got letters. It was mostly just like the price of it right now, stuff like that. I never got like magazines or articles or any news like that. So when I came out, I was just pretty much in shock. I guess it would be similar to going into jail and there was no cell phones and coming out and there's cell phones. It was a pretty big culture shock.
And what did you do immediately when you saw the price of Bitcoin?
I almost shit myself.
What was it at when you got out?
When I went in, I think it was around $20, maybe $25. When I first got out, I think I made that first climb to 200-ish. And then I was like, well, okay, so this is more than just something that you buy drugs with. And then quickly thereafter, it made the climb to 1,000 off the Mount Gox, Willie bought or whatever it was, and then crashed. And then, you know, all through all these waves, just been holding and like learning more, and it's been crazy.
What's been your learning journey? What did you hop into and sort of use to sort of harden your belief in the hodl mentality? Yeah,
well, I mean, a lot of it was like YouTube with Andreas, like everyone says. From there, a lot of podcasts, this podcast specifically. But I don't know, man. I Twitter, following people, and just everything. Now, more recently, like Safety Dean's book. I just got Jimmy Song's new
Little Bitcoin book.
Yeah, I just got that one, so I'm gonna start reading that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just nonstop learning. It never ends. It's a full-time job just keeping up with everything that's going on.
Yeah, it's good for us.
Yeah.
To try to help people keep up with what's going on.
Yeah, we know that one firsthand. Yeah, that's for sure.
So damn man, what's it like doing hard time? Was that you said you're happy you did it. Like, are you genuinely happy that?
Yeah, no, I'm really grateful that I did do the time, and it's just kind of weird. The time itself is pretty lonely. Before I went in, I had a lot of like friends, but they weren't really friends. They were kind of just hanging around me because, you know, like I was partying and stuff like that. When I went to jail, no one really wrote me letters. So it was a little lonely at first, but I developed a really like this passion for learning because I had nothing to do in there besides read books. So when I was in school, I never went to class. And I was just too immature at the time. I just never had developed that passion for learning. And then in there, I had developed. I would read a book, you know, at least a book every 2 or 3 days. So just loving it.
What subjects in particular?
Oh, anything, man. I read business books about creating companies, marketing books. I really like Seth Godin. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. He's a big marketer. But anything I could get my hands on. They had a lot of fiction. And then I just continued that when I got out. I just kept reading, and then got into, you know, the YouTube stuff and all the other types. So it's been crazy.
Yeah, fuck, man, it's fascinating. This might be the most fascinating story we've had come through TFTC.
Yeah, it's a very different story from all the other podcasts I hear. So it's it's a cool story. And then when I look back on it, it's almost like crazy to think that I went through it, that it happened. It almost seems like not real.
So what is your life like now? What are you doing looking forward?
Yeah, so right now my life is really mellow. I just like to read, work out, and that's really it. And I don't have like your typical 9 to 5, given the forced huddle, and I'm lucky to be in the position that I'm in, just traveling and just really enjoying life. It's cool.
Yeah, well, fuck, man. Where's your travels taking you?
Okay,
If you
so
don't mind
yeah,
disclosing.
yeah, no. In the East Coast right now. Never been in the East Coast, so this is really cool to be here. And then gonna go back home for a little bit, and then from there probably, I don't know. I really want to check out Germany is where I want to go next. So we'll see. It's kind of on a whim wherever I end up.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
So giving your story, your connection with Silk Road, and it seems like you have a very big passion for liberty and
Huge.
and harm reduction and all. So,
Huge.
like, what is your view on the state of the world and like the state apparatus and how it sort of imbues these cages on us, if you will?
I mean, it's getting a lot worse. I can tell you that. Like, people's liberties are disappearing. I think the saddest thing to think about is like most people just don't care or aren't aware to what's really going on. Specifically most recently with the stuff in Hong Kong and all that going on. But yeah, people are just not aware with how much of their liberties they give up with technology and Facebook and your phone, and it's nice to have these things, but yeah, it's kind of it's scary to see the way the world's heading.
Are you optimistic or?
I am optimistic. I'm optimistic because of Bitcoin. Yeah. That's the one reason I'm optimistic about it, because I think Bitcoin really has the ability to defund all these governments and things that are doing this, and it's a completely grassroots movement, and it's like it's all aligned. All the ideals are aligned perfectly. So I'm optimistic because of that.
That's actually one thing I'm interested to hear your perspective on. Is you were involved with Bitcoin on the Silk Road in very early days. So when you got out of jail and saw like the discourse around Bitcoin, like where the industry was in particular, like how had the conversation around Bitcoin changed, and were you happy with the direction it went in over the course of your sentence?
Are you talking about like the forks and stuff? Is that what you're saying, or like what do you?
Just anything. Like the way people were talking about Bitcoin in 2011 had to be drastically different than in 2015, 2016.
Yeah. Well, definitely very different. I can only talk about from my perspective. Like I always thought of it as this thing to buy stuff with, and then I got out and it was my whole view on it's changed. And I think that's kind of the understanding people have of it now. It's also weird for me to even hear the word Bitcoin. When, I was out at a bar the other night and I heard some people mention it, because I come from a time when Bitcoin was exclusively like drugs essentially, or it was very closely connected to it. Whereas now it's a financial instrument now. It's big time. So hearing people talk about it still kind of weirds me out, because I'm like, I come from a scene where it's not that, and I'm still getting used to people talking about it normally.
What did you think Bitcoin was going to turn into when you were a vendor? Did you just think it would be something ephemeral that would die out eventually and then move to something else, or? No,
actually, I remember even before I became a buyer or a vendor on Silk Road, I remember hearing about the Silk Road, how this guy told me about the Silk Road, and then I remember Bitcoin along with it, and I remember telling my buddy, I was like, yo, this thing is crazy. How can you buy stuff online and not be stopped? And right there I knew it was something big, because it allowed you to do something that before you couldn't do. I remember telling my one buddy, I was like, hey, sink $1,000 into this thing. If it doesn't become something, then you lost $1,000. It's really not a big deal. And it was $7.60 at the time. And so he made off pretty well. But
he listened to you?
Yeah, he did.
Boss.
Yeah.
So like the weakest part of these markets is by far the actual mailing of the items, right? So like at your peak there, that must have been pretty crazy. You were mailing a ton of stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. From a vendor perspective, anytime you just like, as long as you have you've done what you can as far as your digital persona online to safeguard that. But yeah, there is, you got to eventually interact with the physical world and mail the packages. So. And
if you're a buyer, you have to receive a package too.
Right. Yeah, but as far as a buyer goes, like, I mean, it's plausible deniability. Like, anyone can mail something to someone and doesn't necessarily mean,
right,
that you bought it.
Yeah,
especially if there's no paper trail.
Right. So there is plausible deniability from the buyer, from the buyers, and with that, but yeah, I mean, at the height, when delivering all these packages and dropping them off and stuff was logistic nightmare for sure.
And I think they made it way more difficult nowadays than it used to be.
Yeah.
In terms of getting postage and sending something without a paper trail.
Right. Yeah, that was a hard thing that took me a couple months to figure out how to do that properly.
Well, again, like talking about the evolution of these drug markets, was it the Dream Market that is doing like the
no, it's a different Russian market.
Some Russian market. Yeah, the drops, the geo drops, where they're just dropping coordinates and being like, "Here, pick it up here."
Right.
Which is it's a pretty genius way to get around it, actually.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of ways people do it, and I think that's an interesting thing too. Is just because one of these marketplaces go down, even if all the marketplaces go down, it's not gonna stop.
Right.
So that's when you finally come to the conclusion that, regardless if you think drugs are good or drugs are bad, that's really not important. It's just we've already opened Pandora's box and we're not going back. It's the same thing with Bitcoin. Like, you can't go back now. It's already.
They can't go back. Like, weed is called weed because it's a fucking weed. It grows everywhere.
Right.
Like, who are you to stop somebody from ingesting? Like, it all comes back to personal liberties and stuff like that. Like, again, like, yeah, drugs. People have done drugs for millennia.
Right.
They're gonna keep doing drugs. Might as well make it safe, right?
Yeah.
And you have less Mac Millers and Prince. I think Prince died because there was some fentanyl in his drugs as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you see the tide of this conversation turning in America or around the world at all?
As far as like drugs go?
Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, you have places like Portugal. So I think eventually, like, over time, yeah, I'm optimistic about it. I don't know if it will be in my lifetime, but yeah, I mean, we've seen it, growing up. We got weed getting decriminalized and legalized in a lot of states now, and I think didn't Colorado recently do something with mushrooms or something like that? So like, people are slowly starting to come around to this idea, maybe. Yeah.
I know ayahuasca is legal in Oakland, which caught me off guard.
Okay, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Just the city of Oakland?
Just the city of Oakland, yeah.
Interesting.
Huh. They had to one up San Francisco and get some tourism dollars. Another thing I wanted to touch on was, I guess back then, like, a lot of the narrative around Bitcoin was that it was anonymous. A lot of people that thought it was anonymous back then have since realized that
right.
it's has a lot of privacy issues.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? How important is it that you're able to use Bitcoin privately? That it can be used for these possibly illicit things, depending on which government it is and how they decide what's illicit and what's not. How important is the actual censorship-resistant properties of Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I was part of that group early on that thought it was anonymous. And then now, obviously, it's not. But I mean, going forward, you got things like Wasabi and Samurai and all those things that are there will be tools, and in due time, it'll be fungible and everything like that. I don't necessarily think like it needs to be like Monero on the base layer or
right.
anything like that.
But it's still super important.
Oh, it's very important.
One of the interesting things about Silk Road is that it was also one of the first mixers. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
Do you remember that process? Like when you deposited funds to the Silk Road, they would mix them up for you.
Yeah.
That would make sense actually, because the coin join all-time high was in like 2012 or something like that.
It's part of the reason why they needed to be custodial too.
Right. I forget. Yeah, I know they did have a mixer in there. It kind of running blank on it right now. And then there was a couple other ones at the time too that were essentially
just websites. Where
exactly. I forget the name of them, but even back then, not a lot of people like use those. I mean, if you deposit in the Silk Road, I think by default it would do a little like coin join. A little. I'm not sure if it did.
I don't even think it was coin join. I think it was just
just a tumbler.
Custodial tumbler.
Yeah. So, but I don't think like that was back then. Like most people thought it was anonymous. So I don't even think like most people care, but
they weren't really thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't thinking about it, and then now I'm like super aware of what it is, but I'm optimistic again about the way this technology is heading. So
yeah, it seems to be heading in a good direction. It was actually what I wrote about in the Bent this morning was just future, thinking of the future and the bigger picture of all this, and specifically citing a piece that Nick Carter wrote. The name of it is escaping me, and then
Bitcoin is a peaceful revolution.
Yes, Bitcoin is a peaceful revolution, and then
that was a great title.
It's a great article.
This other article that came out this morning from Paradigma Capital, I believe. I'm gonna butcher that, but it was like Bitcoin, like a Pax Bitcoinia, like similar to Pax Romana, thinking 150 years into the future. And it does feel like if Bitcoin is successful, it can basically enable us to fight back against these state powers and eventually have the state sort of negotiate with us and be like, hey, a sort of menu option of state services. I could see that arising in the future. I don't really have a particular question or anything. I just wanted to go on there.
No, I hear what you're talking about, and I definitely think about that too. It's like I think the world and a lot can change in 10 years. And then if you think about if Bitcoin really does what it set out to do, which I'm so bullish on, I think it will 100%. Like the world is going to be drastically different than what we have now. We might, have different borders, or I don't know what it's going to look like. It's almost, I can't even fathom what it will be, because it's like thinking about what the world will be like with the internet, in the 80s or the 70s. It's like you can't even fathom that. So.
Well, I can't even fathom like how much this is ingrained in your mind too, because of your forced hodl, like coming out and not having that big of an inclination of how big Bitcoin had gotten over the 4 years that you were in jail, and coming out and be like, holy shit, like maybe that's what everybody needs is a 4 years forced hodl. Stop thinking about it and
time lock it.
Right?
Yeah.
So what? I guess what like I want to dive into like your mentality while you were you thinking about your Bitcoin a lot, and were you worried about it while you were in jail?
No, honestly, I wasn't thinking about it really at all. Mostly because I didn't know what the price was. So I honestly forgot about it. Thank God, I had a proper setup when I had made my vendor account and cold storage and things like that. So when I did get out, it was there. But no, when I went in, and while I was in there, I wasn't thinking about it too much. And then when I got out, it just hit me like a ton of bricks.
How long after you got out did like the Bitcoin price? Was it a couple days, a couple hours? Was it something you checked right away, or was it something that popped up in a headline? You're like, what the fuck?
I don't remember. I don't even think I checked it right when I got out. I think it was like a couple days later. I just was like, oh yeah, I got Bitcoin. And then I checked the price randomly maybe a week later, and I was like, oh my God.
Holy shit.
So, yeah, it's just crazy. It's just crazy start to finish.
This is probably one of the craziest stories that we've had on TFTC.
Yeah.
What time we got here?
But yeah, I mean, it's cool. I'm really grateful. It's funny anytime you hear, I met a lot of people in jail who were very bitter about the situation that they were in, and understandably so. But for me, it was just like a really eye-opening experience. Like like I said, learning, just finding my passion for learning, and then the forced hodl, and just making the best of like the bad situation that it was. So it was. I mean, in a weird way, it was a good thing.
You were young, right?
Yeah, I was young. Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck, man.
Yeah.
I think, is there any, like, so that, you were cut off from technology and the rest of the world for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what, like, is there any lessons you can learn from being disconnected that you could sort of imbue to the freaks out there? Or
Yeah.
what is the life of, like, refreshing Twitter every 5 seconds like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of it too, having my phone out all the time. But I noticed there's, a couple months ago, I broke my phone, and I just realized it was a day before I got a new phone, and I just realized how much time people spend looking at screens. And so I really make it like or I try my best to be present in right now when I'm talking to someone, not to be also on my phone. That's like a big thing I learned was in there is like, you don't have technology. All you got, when you're having a conversation with someone in there, in jail, you are only talking to them. And now it's, this generation is, you're having a conversation with someone, but they might be on their phone having another conversation with 2 or 3 other people. So it's, and I'm guilty of it too, but yeah, just being present and yeah,
Engaged.
yeah.
That's one of the things I love about this podcast is because we have conversations with so many people, and it's completely like socially unacceptable for them to be like checking their phone and stuff. So you're like you're like put into this forced. We just recorded an episode with Arbed Out on Twitter. And it was like a 3-hour epic episode, and no one looked at their phones the whole time.
Right.
And that's so rare in today's society for you to have a 3-hour conversation with someone, and have 0 distractions. And I've seen that spill over into my real life situations where I'm always trying to make eye contact all the time and
Eye contact's key. And
put your phone away, put on silent.
In these conversations, we're only 46 minutes in here, but even 45 minutes of straight talking on one subject is not something that many people do anymore. And again, like you said, everybody's checking Twitter or their text while they're talking. And I mean, that's the reason why we have this sort of open, long form type structure on this podcast. Whatever you dive into subjects that, I mean, Rogan basically paved the way and just dive into something very, very intently.
Were there any other like major paradigm shifts that you noticed? Because I mean, that was like I think that was like a pretty structural 4 years just in society in general. Was there anything that really stood out?
Like the Syria debacle went down during then.
I mean, like smartphones weren't really that big when you went in, right?
Right.
And then you came out, and now everyone has like a supercomputer in their pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it I'm sure there was, and I've been out for more than a few years now, so I probably forget all of them, but yeah, definitely the cell phone thing. Like I said, everyone's on their phones now. So, Bitcoin itself, but just the way people interact with each other is different, and yeah, I mean.
Do you have was there any Bitcoin friends in jail?
I had brought it up to a couple people, and a couple people had heard of it, but not really. Yeah. So, and I was in a couple different facilities, but some people had heard of it, but I don't know what extent they were involved with it though.
I feel like it would be like a pretty effective place to shill Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got so much time on their hands. They're very much a nothing to lose kind of mentality.
Right. It's interesting too because I'm in there, talking, trying to educate myself, and then I like conversation, so trying to have a conversation with someone in there about Bitcoin or whatever it is that you're doing. You got to kind of tread lightly because of the area you're in and the situation you're in, the environment, that when you go up to someone, naturally they're apprehensive. When you go up to them, they think the worst. What are you coming to me for? So it's a little difficult to have conversations with people in there. And that's why I mostly just stuck to myself and read and stuff like that.
Oh, that's actually kind of interesting. So, I mean, with Bitcoin, I think it's like really important to have an adversarial mindset. You know, don't trust, verify.
Right.
Do you think that doing time kind of shaped that mindset for you in a lot of ways? And that, you know, like that you were just inherently skeptical of other people?
Yeah, I mean,
Silk Road probably made you naturally think that way as well, too. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good thing to be skeptical, and if you know, you don't want to be a sheep, so you need to be able to hear someone's opinion, but then also not believe it for truth and ever take it for truth and create your own understanding of what they're saying. So yeah,
Dive in yourself.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've tried to be more cognizant of on Twitter in particular is not retweeting clickbait headlines. Because that's the other thing actually in this day and age that's crazy, especially with protest and events similar to protests where you get videos, and the rainforest burning down was another example. You get videos and pictures from a completely different situation, and you don't even know if it's true or not. So just trying to dive into the news and the layers beyond it. Yeah.
We have an abundance of information right now, and because of that, you know, there's a lot of noise, and you got to sift through it on your own. And I think that's what the skeptic. That's why it's good to be skeptical.
Yeah,
you got to sift through that stuff.
No, yeah, Bitcoin really pushes that mindset to the fore, and brings skepticism to other aspects in your life, right?
Right.
Inherently skeptical of the news these days, and across the board. Right.
Well, yeah, I don't believe anything the news says. First off, but Twitter's been pretty amazing. I mean, the stuff you can learn on there from, you know, people in Argentina or Venezuela. You can find people on the ground that are living that life instead of reading it through the lens of a reporter who's putting their little twist on it. So I like Twitter for that. You can really get hands on.
Get to the source. It actually works out great for us. Where we talking about Argentina the last couple of weeks. I've had a few Argentines hop into my DMs like, "Yo, here's what's going down on the scene." But then again, I am that reporter, sort of trying to reporter. I can't believe I just called myself a reporter. But yeah, no, I feel a great amount of responsibility trying to convey that information accurately. And it does differ than what a lot of people will say, what's happening on the ground and what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Primary sources. Yeah, we have so much access to primary sources now.
Right. And you're a great example of one.
Yeah.
Again, the Silk Road's something that I've talked about a lot. People on this podcast have talked about a lot, but a lot of people, I would argue most who have been on this podcast talking about Silk Road have never actually interacted with it or been a part of it.
I mean, I never used it.
Right.
Silk Road was before my time, my Bitcoin time.
Well, Silk Road was actually my original introduction to Bitcoin. I just didn't think it could work, and I was sketched out by the mailing of things.
Right.
I would refuse to receive like a package in the mail.
Yeah. And that's understandable. Again, the skepticism you're talking about, you're like, how could this work? And even if it does, like, putting myself at risk, like.
Yeah, and I like if you're a young person too, there's a lot of access. You can get stuff if you need to get stuff, and you just pay in cash and never have to have that need for it in the first place.
It's not really hard to find pot in this city.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's what was crazy too. Is obviously you get the places I was shipping stuff to. Some of them, would make sense if if pot wasn't legalized there, it would make sense to be shipping to Kansas or wherever it was going at the time. But then there were places too that I was kind of blown away. I'm like, why am I sending this here? Because I know you guys have easy access to it. And then it kind of struck me, maybe this person is a 55, 60-year-old father or grandpa, or you don't know who's on the other end of that. And so they just like the comfort of their own house and knowing that they can wait and it'll come, and it's exactly what it says it's going to be, and that's that. So
and there's many layers to the safety, like physical safety, obviously, but then like social. I don't want to call it social safety, but people who are apprehensive to walk into a dispensary and quote unquote jeopardize their social capital or whatever.
Right.
Again, stay the safety of their own homes. And get a package and nobody knows anything is happening.
No, I mean, if it's completely legal, I would much prefer to just have it delivered, right? You never have to talk to anyone. You never have to, just like everything else. Just like everything we order from Amazon, you get a cheaper price, you get a better product.
Yeah.
The only friction there is it being
the
illegal.
weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
What about that? Do you think most of your buyers were like end users that were consuming it themselves, or do you think it was more of like a distribution to then like a local dealer who was then selling?
Yeah, honestly, don't know. You can kind of like, I can kind of parse through the information that I got from their orders, which was, basically just the quantity.
Yeah, quantity kind of tells you, right?
Yeah, can tell me something. So I can make assumptions based off that, but you never know, like, if someone is just they just love weed and they smoke a lot of weed, or if they like to party and do cocaine or whatever it is they do. You don't know, but yeah, I assume there was a fair amount of people who were also purchasing from me to make money off it.
Like that's how I like the way I found out about it. The first time I ever found out about Bitcoin was my buddy was going to school and he was at a different college than me, and him and his roommate would buy on Silk Road and then they would sell to all their fellow college kids.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that did the same thing with me, but I never spent too much time thinking about it. I was just so busy. Yeah.
It's crazy to see how quickly that market flourished too, because it was truly free. Like, was it like just a constant adrenaline rush?
Yeah, I mean, waking up every day and just seeing the rows of orders, I was just like, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. So yeah, it was wild. And then I remember when eventually the Silk Road, I was trying to just sign on to the site, and they had that FBI seized landing page, and I was like, what? That was crazy in itself too, to see. I was like, how did that happen? And it was kind of sad to see. It was sad to see like the whole community go away and then shift to where it is now, to this dynamic of there will be a marketplace for 5 or 6 months and exit scamming, and it's changed. So
sort of fractured the community that was on the forums.
Yeah, and there still is also, there are sites on Tor that are exclusively forums. They're not marketplaces. So there still does exist that community, but not, I wouldn't say to the extent that it was, or maybe it might even be bigger than it was, but it felt like more of a community back then, I would say.
Yeah.
Were you caught off guard when the FBI seized it?
Yeah.
It was unexpected.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I went to the wrong site or something. I didn't get it.
And you found this out after you were released?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a big story for a while. And it's probably why I eventually dove down the rabbit hole in earnest, was what the fuck is going on here?
Did you lose some Bitcoin on it when it went down?
Yeah, I think I probably lost probably 40 or 50. Yeah.
Craziness.
But I remember
Tim Draper probably owns them now.
What?
I said Tim Draper probably owns them now.
Yeah. Son of a bitch. No, good guy. But I remember at the height when it was every week, my escrow account would be about 200 or 300 Bitcoin a week. I remember that.
Shit.
So, but back then it was I think $12. So, yeah. But
Craziness.
to think about that now, it's like, holy shit. But back then it was a couple $1,000 stuck in escrow.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I signed up, I was like one of the first users to sign up for Coinbase. and I think they were giving out $1.
$100.
Yeah, it was 0.1 Bitcoin. But, 10 million sats they were giving out with every new sign up.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane when you think about it.
And
now.
you go back to even before that, when Gavin had that faucet that was just getting people people could go and get 5 free Bitcoin on Bitcoin Talk. I'm pretty sure it got gamed by bots.
Yeah, it got drained super quickly.
Yeah,
says a lot about Gavin that he had a gameable faucet.
But I think that's also how we'll look back 5-10 years from now, and people are talking about having one whole Bitcoin is going to be crazy. So
there was people buying 0.01 Bitcoin on Cash App 2 years ago.
I mean, we're playing in a fantasy league with a bunch of other Bitcoiners on Twitter, and the entry fee was 1 million sats. So the prize pool is 12 million sats. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, in a couple of years, we're going to look back and be like, fuck, I should have paid more attention to that league.
Right.
Me, definitely. I'm getting my dick pushed in right now.
Yeah, Marty auto-drafted that draft.
I was at dinner.
That whole time I was like, Marty, you just auto-drafted away millions of dollars.
Yeah. And it's also cool too. I really like, the idea of time preference too. I've become super aware of, and I literally like you're talking about like how do I live? I live a really like kind of like reclusive life now, where I have the choice to go buy brand new shoes, and I still wear these shoes are probably 4 or 5 years old. I just don't, because I'd rather just buy some Bitcoin. That's it. It just is like it's good for your health,
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like that's one thing. I have this is one of 2 pairs of shorts. I have 2 pairs of pants, a few t-shirts. Just cycle through those, and
yeah, you just realize the importance of just the importance of sacrificing like luxuries right now for potential future, like your future self. So it's cool to think about, and I don't think many people, at least like many people I know, are still caught up in just partying and the newest shoes that have come out, and
the cloud chasers.
Yeah,
the cloud
exactly.
chasers, man.
Credit card debt.
Right.
No,
So
cloud chasing's the thing. It's crazy, especially in fashion. Like the cloud chasing in fashion boggles my mind because it's so expensive and it changes from season to season.
Well, it's crazy. I went to a store out here just yesterday, and I saw it firsthand. The lengths people will go to get the newest thing, and it's
dude, we're around the corner from one of the Supreme.
Oh God.
One of the Supreme shops, and you'll walk by, they'll have the lines caged in and people fist fighting for Supreme drops. It's gotten insane.
Craziness.
I do have some Supreme wear as well, but I got it on the online drop. I would never wait in line with those heathens.
That's another thing. When I got involved, I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013. I thought I was way late. Did you think you were late when you first found it?
Yeah, I think you always think you're late.
Right? No matter what, everyone thinks they're late, I think.
Yeah. And I don't, that's what you always think you're late.
Like there was some guy who found it like a year after the first Bitcoin was mined. He came in, he was late. He thought he was late too, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that tweet where the guy, he says, bought at 3, should have held on because it's now 8, and that's like, what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And it's
I sold at 5.
Yeah. Damn it. I always think I'm late, but now I'm just like, I don't really, I just stay buying.
It just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't, because you're just buying a piece of a finite amount, and that's once you realize that, once you really grasp that you own something and no one can ever have it, and it's a set amount, and then you're like, it doesn't really matter what price you buy at.
Right. Digital real estate, baby.
That's exactly what it is.
It's a land grab. Join us. You will eventually submit whether you do or not.
Right.
Sorry for getting heady there. No, this has been a fascinating conversation, man. Thank you again for pinging us and showing up.
No problem.
Thanks for listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it going, because when I'm flying, I need to have that content. So yeah,
we'll try to keep up, man. But no, again, dude, your story's fascinating. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Is there anything you wanna, any parting notes you want to give to the freaks out there?
I mean, just stay learning. I don't know. keep stacking them sats, and that's it. That's it, really. I mean, just keep stacking and learning along the way, and also different from Bitcoin, but just kind of being, like I was saying, being present in the here and now. Really focus on, when you're having conversations with people, just being attentive and being right there with them instead of being all over the place and looking at your phone. It's kind of, that's what I'd have to say.
I think that's great advice to end on. Matt, you got anything?
Stay humble, stack sets.
Peace and love, freaks.